It's no secret that Game of Thrones killed off a lot of characters, but some deaths stood out more than others. Today, we're walking through the most unforgettable ones. Some of these you could see coming from a mile away. Others hit out of nowhere and changed everything. And the first shocking death was Ned Stark's. Ned Stark wasn't just the Warden of the North, he was the moral backbone of Westeros. Loyal to King Robert, devoted to his family, and known for a rigid sense of honor, Ned was the kind of man you expected to survive. But in Game of Thrones, honor was a liability. When Robert died, Ned uncovered the truth. Joffrey was not Robert's son, but the product of Cersei's affair with Jaime Lannister. This revelation gave Ned the chance to secure the realm, but it also made him dangerous to the crown. Instead of playing the game, Ned tried to do the honorable thing, confronting Cersei directly and trusting Peter Baelish to back his claim. That trust was fatal. When Ned attempted to seize control after Robert's death, Littlefinger betrayed him and Ned was thrown into the dungeons. Imprisoned, Ned was left with one option: confess to treason to save his daughter Sansa. He swallowed his pride and agreed. Brought before a crowd in the Great Sept of Baelor, Ned confessed and prepared himself for exile at the Wall. But Joffrey had no interest in mercy. Smiling, he announced the execution. The crowd erupted, Sansa screamed, Arya fought to push forward, yet no one could stop it. And with a single swing of the sword, the man who seemed untouchable was gone. Now, while Ned Stark's death showed us that honor in Westeros is not always a good thing, Khal Drogo's showed us that even the life of a warrior is as fickle as it gets. Khal Drogo entered the story as a towering presence, the undefeated warlord of the Dothraki. To most, he was a ruthless conqueror. To Daenerys, he became something more: a protector, a husband, and eventually the first person to recognize her strength. But for all his power, Drogo's downfall came not from a rival Khalasar or an enemy's blade, but from arrogance during a fight with one of his own men. When challenged, he refused armor, choosing instead to prove his strength. He killed his opponent easily, but the cut across his chest, though shallow, festered. As the infection worsened, his strength faded. Desperate, Daenerys sought help from Mirri Maz Duur, a healer she had spared during their raid. But the cure she offered was blood magic, a ritual that demanded sacrifice. The cost was their unborn son's life, and Drogo was left alive in body, but empty in spirit. Faced with the man she loved reduced to a shell, Daenerys made the most painful choice. She whispered her goodbyes, pressed a pillow over his face, and ended his suffering with her own hands. The stallion who was prophesied to mount the world died not in glory, but in silence, leaving Daenerys alone and setting her on the path to becoming the mother of dragons. Drogo's death was a tragedy, but the next one was remembered as one of the most shocking twists in TV history. Robb Stark, the young wolf, had become the North's biggest hope. With his mother Catelyn beside him, he led battle after battle, racking up wins that even the Lannisters couldn't ignore. For a while, it looked like the Starks might actually pull it off. But Robb made one mistake that cost him everything. He broke his marriage pact with House Frey. Instead of marrying one of Walder Frey's daughters, he followed his heart and chose Talisa. Walder Frey was the kind of man who knew how to hold a grudge, and he wasn't about to let the insult slide. To patch things up, Robb's uncle Edmure agreed to marry a Frey daughter, and the Starks thought the problem was solved with another wedding. But then the doors shut, the band switched tunes, and suddenly the atmosphere turned cold. In an instant, it was chaos. Arrows rained down. Robb's men were butchered. Talisa was stabbed over and over in her stomach as Robb watched in horror. And then came the final betrayal. Catelyn's scream cut through the hall before her throat was slit, and with that, the North's dream of victory was wiped out in a single night. The Red Wedding destroyed the Starks, but the Purple Wedding? That one took out the Lannisters' cruelest king. Joffrey Baratheon was already the most hated character in Westeros, a boy king who ruled with cruelty and delighted in making others suffer. His wedding to Margaery Tyrell should have been a moment of glory for the Lannisters, but it became one of the most infamous nights in the realm. At the feast, Joffrey was in rare form. The tension broke when Margaery called for the grand wedding pie. The entire hall's attention shifted as the enormous dish was rolled in. Joffrey set his cup aside to carve into it, grinning as pigeons burst out in a show of extravagance. But when he returned to his wine, freshly poured by Tyrion only moments before, the poison was already waiting. Joffrey gulped it down with bites of pie, smirking all the while. Tyrion asked to take his leave but was denied, and the coughing started. In front of the entire court, Joffrey collapsed, gasping for air. Cersei rushed to cradle her son, screaming in horror. All eyes turned to Tyrion, the last man seen handling the cup, making him the immediate suspect, though the true conspiracy ran deeper. The boy king's reign ended not with a war, but with a poisoned sip of wine at his own wedding feast. The purple wedding was oddly satisfying, but Oberyn's trial by combat showed that satisfaction in Westeros never lasts long. Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper of Dorne, exploded onto the scene with charisma, confidence, and vengeance on his mind. His sister Alia had been murdered during Robert's rebellion, and Oberyn came to King's Landing with one goal: justice. When Tyrion Lannister was accused of poisoning Joffrey, Oberyn volunteered to fight as his champion. It wasn't about Tyrion, it was about finally facing Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, the man who butchered Elia. The trial by combat drew the entire court. Oberyn stepped into the arena lightly armed but deadly confident. Circling the mountain, he danced with precision, striking with speed while taunting his massive opponent. The crowd watched in awe as Oberyn cut the giant down, piercing him with his spear. The mountain collapsed, and victory seemed certain. Tyrion smiled. Oberyn's allies cheered. It looked like justice at last. But Oberyn wasn't finished. He wanted a confession. Standing too close, he demanded again and again that the mountain speak his crimes. And in that moment of triumph, Oberyn left himself open. Justice slipped away in an instant. Oberyn's arrogance turned victory into one of the most brutal deaths in the series and sealed Tyrion's fate. And if Oberyn's death showed us how arrogance can turn triumph into tragedy, Shireen's death showed us how desperation can twist love into cruelty. Shireen Baratheon was the innocent heart of House Baratheon. Stannis' only child, she carried the burden of grayscale from infancy, but she grew into a sweet, curious girl, spending her days reading and comforting her father in quiet moments. To viewers, she was one of the rare, pure souls in a world full of cruelty. But Stannis' campaign for the Iron Throne was crumbling. His army was freezing in the snow outside Winterfell, starving and losing morale. Supplies dwindled, men deserted, and every path forward seemed hopeless. That's when Melisandre, his Red Priestess, insisted the Lord of Light required a great sacrifice. At first, Stannis pushed back. He loved his daughter, and Shireen trusted him completely. But his ambition and desperation wore him down. In one of the series' most haunting scenes, Stannis made his choice. He told Shireen she could help him win the war, and she agreed eagerly, never realizing what that meant. Led to the pyre, Shireen was tied to a stake as soldiers looked on in silence. Stannis turned away, torn between love and ambition, while Selyse, her mother, collapsed in regret too late. Shireen's death wasn't just shocking, it was devastating. In sacrificing her, Stannis didn't just lose the throne, he lost his soul. From the fire that claimed Shireen, we moved to another death that felt just as cruel. Hodor had always been one of the gentlest souls in Westeros. Simple in speech, saying only his name, but endlessly loyal. He carried Bran Stark on his back through snow, danger, and battle, never asking for anything in return. To Bran and Meera, he was more than just a helper. As Bran's powers as a Green Seer grew, he learned to warg into Hodor, using his body when danger struck. What no one realized was how deeply those powers were tied to Hodor's fate. It all came together in Season 6, when Bran's visions of the past overlapped with a White Walker attack in the present. The cave of the Three-Eyed Raven was overrun, and the group's only chance to escape was for Hodor to hold the tunnel doors shut against a horde of Whites. Bran, still connected to a vision of young Wylis, warged into Hodor at that exact moment. The commands collided across time. In the past, young Wylis seized up, screaming, "Hold the door!"
Hold the door!
Hodor! 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 Hodor!
Over and over until it slurred into a single word, Hodor. In the present, the grown man pressed his weight against the door, his body being ripped apart by the dead as Bran and Meera fled. Hodor didn't die with a sword in his hand or on a battlefield. He died saving his friends, trapped by a destiny written decades before. So while Hodor died holding the door so others could live, Littlefinger's end came because the door of deception finally closed on him. Petyr Baelish, better known as Littlefinger, built his life on manipulation. From sparking wars to whispering in ears, his schemes shaped Westeros more than most kings ever could. By the time he returned to Winterfell, his ambition was fixed on Sansa Stark. He flattered her, guided her, but behind every kind word was a plan to control her. He began planting seeds of mistrust between Sansa and Arya. He slipped her the letter Arya once wrote under duress to Robb and whispered that Arya wanted to be Lady of Winterfell herself. Slowly, he tried to make it look like Arya was plotting in the shadows, dangerous and unstable. So when the Lords of the North gathered in the Great Hall, it looked like the trap had worked. Sansa began listing charges: treason, conspiracy, betrayal, without naming who she meant. The camera lingered on Arya, standing calm but ready, as though the accusations were about to fall squarely on her. For a moment, even the audience believed Arya was the one on trial. Then came the twist. Sansa turned, locked her eyes on Littlefinger, and delivered the charges to him instead. The master manipulator stammered, begged, even dropped to his knees. But no one came to his defense. Arya drew her blade and, with one clean stroke, slit his throat in front of everyone. Littlefinger thought he had finally split the Stark sisters apart, but in the end, their unity destroyed him. Littlefinger played games with people's minds. Ramsay played games with their lives. Both lost. Ramsay Bolton was the definition of cruelty. He hunted girls for sport, broke Theon Greyjoy into reek, and ruled Winterfell through fear. Where other villains used politics or power, Ramsay's weapon was sadism, and for a while it kept him on top. But his reign started to crack at the Battle of the Bastards. Jon Snow and Sansa Stark's army was badly outnumbered, and Ramsay knew it. His strategy was simple and merciless. Draw Jon into the open, rain arrows down, and suffocate the wildlings and Northmen in a shield wall of death. The plan worked. Jon's army was trapped, crushed together in a mound of bodies, gasping for air as Ramsay's soldiers closed in. Then salvation arrived. Sansa had secretly written to Petyr Baelish, and the Knights of the Vale stormed into the battlefield, their cavalry smashing through Ramsay's forces from behind. The tide turned in an instant. Ramsay's carefully laid trap shattered, his men scattering in panic. Ramsay fled back to Winterfell, but Jon's army, with the help of a giant, broke through the gates. In the courtyard, Jon beat him to the ground with his bare fists, stopping only when he saw Sansa watching. And then came justice. Locked in the very kennels he once used to terrorize others, Ramsay faced Sansa one last time. She reminded him that his name, his house, and his memory would disappear. Then, with calm finality, she unleashed his starving hounds. The man who fed others to his dogs became their final meal. Ramsay Bolton, the sadist who ruled through fear, died in the most fitting way imaginable. Ramsay ruled through fear until the end. Daenerys? She ruled with fire, and it consumed her too. From the moment Daenerys Targaryen walked out of the flames with 3 baby dragons, she seemed destined for greatness. She freed slaves, toppled tyrants, and built an army that worshipped her as the breaker of chains. To her followers, she was a liberator. But by the final season, her vision of a better world had hardened into obsession, and her enemies paid the price. The last straw came with Missandei. Captured by Cersei and paraded in chains, Daenerys' closest friend and confidant stood on the walls of King's Landing with the mountain at her back. In front of Grey Worm, Tyrion, and Daenerys herself, Cersei ordered Missandei's execution. With defiance in her final breath, Missandei shouted, "Dracarys!" and the mountain took her head. That moment broke Daenerys. She had lost Jorah, 2 dragons, and now the one person who gave her comfort in Westeros. Mercy was gone. Vengeance was all that remained. So when King's Landing's bells rang in surrender, Daenerys ignored them. Mounted on Drogon, she unleashed fire, burning soldiers and civilians alike. The queen who once promised mercy became the very tyrant she swore to destroy. In the aftermath, Jon Snow faced an impossible choice. Torn between love and duty, he visited her in the throne room, where she finally stood before the Iron Throne she had dreamed of her entire life. Jon embraced her, whispering words of love. But as they kissed, he slid a dagger into her heart. Shock crossed her face as the life drained from her, collapsing in his arms. The Mother of Dragons was gone in an instant. Then came Drogon's roar, shaking the ruins of the throne room. The dragon nudged her lifeless body, then turned his fury on the Iron Throne itself, melting it to slag. With tender care, Drogon carried Daenerys away, disappearing into the sky. Daenerys Targaryen, once the world's greatest hope, died not at the hands of an enemy but by the betrayal of the man she loved, and the fire of vengeance that consumed her began with Missandei's final word, Dracarys. The Game of Thrones proved time and time again that no character was untouchable. These deaths shook the realm, rewrote allegiances, and kept us all on the edge of our seats. Drop a comment. Whose death do you think was the most jaw-dropping?